Welcome. I have an amazing guest today, Mark Ortiz, the owner and founder of M&M Fine Services based out of New York. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me, Michael.
So you actually own an art handling company?
Yes, I do. M&M Fine Art Services based here in New York City.
So tell me a little bit, like, what does an art handling company do?
Well, we work with galleries in regard to, well, as far as my level of this is right now. I mean, we started off with one idea, but we wound up going into another idea only because of necessity. We work with a lot of, my end of it is that I work with a lot of galleries to establish transport to and from fairs. We also do a lot of local work, but we package their art for them. We transport it, we safely unpack it, and in some cases, if they require, we will install it in the client's home or at an art fair. We do a lot of art fairs. I mean, we do a lot of everything, but I mean, our general heavy load of business is art fairs. We travel from all over the country doing art fairs.
So you would pick up the work from the artist's home and then bring it to the fair, and then would you take the work from the fair to the buyer's home?
Well, we do all of the above. I mean, it starts with, the conversation with the gallery, whether we're picking up at the gallery, whether we're picking up at an artist studio, whether we're picking up at a private collector's home. And with that, there's all sorts of levels of things you have to do. I mean, whether it's pre-making crates or figuring out what packing material you're going to need, what kind of packing material you're going to need, whether you need a certificate of operation just to be able to go into a building to work, just to pick up a piece of art. There's a lot of different moving parts to all these aspects. So, that's all part of the initial conversation that we have with the galleries to decide, what's involved in each job.
So let's say that I had just a work of art, say that I'm selling a small sculpture.
Okay.
A little bit more complicated than a painting here.
Right.
Say that I had a small sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sitting I'm the artist, it's sitting in my studio, and it needs to go to the fair. Walk us through what would happen.
Okay, well, obviously, I mean, I'd start by setting up an appointment. I'd have to have a pre-meeting with the artist. Even though I get sizes, most part from either the gallery and or the artist, unfortunately in this industry, you learned over the years, never trust anybody's measurements. Because even if you're off by, a half inch, a quarter inch, it can make all the difference on whether you can use your crate or not. And in some cases, when you absolutely can't get in there to get a measurement, we'll have to, if we have to make a crate for it, we'll have to over make it and just bring tons of foam or packing material just to make sure that it's immobilized in the crate. But what I generally try to do is I try to have an appointment made with the artist where we can go in, get a physical check on the piece to see, number one, what it's made of, what's the material. I mean, can we just conventionally wrap it in, say, some kind of poly film, bubble wrap, blanket? What's going to be the best course of action for this piece? How big do we have to make the crate? What points of contacts will we have for the piece to be immobilized inside the crate? These are all things that we need to factor in when we know that we have to transport something, and especially if it's fragile or glass or something like that. I mean, then you have to start, changing your whole concept of how you're going to do it. And that, in those cases, we would probably ask to have the piece picked up and transported to the shop for when we make the crate, so that we could pack it there in case there's anything, that we need additional that we don't have on hand to go do an artist studio with. So I wanted to just make sure I have all the components necessary to make that crate.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, no worries.
So what advice would you give? Let's say that I am an emerging artist. I'm making art, selling it on Instagram, and someone buys it. What is something that I could do to make sure that I don't mess up my art when I'm selling it, when I'm shipping it?
Well, the one thing I would strongly recommend to the artist is that if you're going to sell something online, first things first, know who's handling it. And if you're going to be the person who's handling it, that's probably even better, because, I think Art 101 is the less you have to handle a piece of art, the better. Because the more hands that get put on that piece of art, the better chance of it is that it's going to get damaged or even not look like you want it to look when it gets there. The few things that I would look at as to when you're going to ship this art, number one, is it completely dry? How are you going to package it? I mean, is it going to need a shadow box? Is it going to need a slip case? I mean, slip case will generally have a surface, have material touching the surface, where shadow box is designed to be longer than the depth of the art. Whether the art's on a 1.5 inch canvas, you make it like 4 or 5 inches deep with a poly film covering, so that if it is still wet while it's being transported, there's nothing that's going to touch the surface, so that, you know, the art isn't going to, the paint itself isn't going to move or melt or whatever or be depressed because of something touching the surface. So I would, yeah, you know, that's the most important thing. Is the artwork dry? You know, and I would, you know, if it's a matter of waiting for the artwork to dry before shipping it, I would do that. I would try to do that as much as I can at any chance possible.
That's super smart.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I'm interested for the artists that are selling work for maybe $1,000, where they don't necessarily have the amount. Would you recommend charging the bill to build all of that to ship it to the customer? Because I imagine that's a little bit expensive. Or
you know, it almost hurts your sale in some cases. Now, there's ways you could do it. I mean, if you have a talented artist who knows how to make a box, who can make a box and ship it, then there's not really any worry for them because they can. I know a lot of people tend to use FedEx, and, you know, people ask me all the time, well, I can ship it somewhere else for, you know, for $300 using FedEx. It's like, okay, well, with all due respect, I'm not FedEx. What I do is a little different and more hands-on and more personally touched, you know, handled. We look at art for what it is. We don't look at it as it's just another package going somewhere. You know, we know what's inside the box. And every box that's on our truck, we know what's in it, and we know how to handle it. So as far as the artist working on it, I would tell them, you could package it yourself. You know what your artwork is, where the points of sensitivity are. I would probably tell them to try to have it floated in a box, you know, where you can actually wrap it around the back and maybe screw to the stretcher so that the front part of it is raised above the surface of the art, to do that as best as you could, and then have it wrapped and then build everything else around that. Even dry or wet, I would always try to do that. This way there's no chance that the surface can get touched. If they can ship it on their own, they're better off doing it. There's probably going to be less of a cost, you know. And that's another thing. I try to work with emerging artists, you know, because a lot of them, like, I don't want to say a lot of them, I have almost my whole staff, the people that work with me, and I do work mostly with, you know, emerging artists and people who are trying to get into that field. They're all in the same boat. They're all trying to make a living while they're getting their art career off the ground. And I try to work with these guys because, you know, these guys are working hard. I mean, I'm working hard, they're working hard. So, you know, if I know that I'm going to a place that, you know, is pretty close to where that artist is trying to ship their piece of artwork to, I'll say, hey, listen, you know, do me a favor. I'll take the piece for you. Give me such and such dollar amount, and it's far off what most art handling companies are going to do it for. You know, because in a lot of cases, I've done that because some of the art handlers that work for me know this particular artist, and, you know, trying to help that artist out. So, you know, I do it for a favor for the people that work for me, / you know, I'm also trying to help an artist, you know, get his recognition. You know, we try to work with as many artists as possible, because you never know, when they make it big one day, they may be saying, hey, I'm only gonna, you know, now that I have this show at the museum, I'm only gonna work with M&M. You know, that's, as I said before, everybody gets treated the same, regardless of, you know, their stature in the industry. So I try to treat everybody exactly the same. And, you know, I try to give people breaks when I can.
That's pure wisdom there. I mean, you know, you get what you give, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's so true.
So let's talk about you for a little bit. Um,
Okay.
when did you first discover that you were interested in art?
That's really interesting. I grew up in a small town in Queens, and we grew up in a household where, you know, we weren't allowed to, my dad was fairly strict, and we weren't allowed to be out hanging out on the street corner,
Mhm.
or as you see a lot of kids do today. Or God forbid, we were sitting inside the house playing a video game. Oh my God, that would go crazy. So we were always involved with sports. So I grew up playing sports. I grew up playing football and baseball. My brother played basketball and football. So all of us, I had two other brothers and I have a sister. We all were athletes at some point or another. I had dreams of playing professional football, and that all went away when I tore my knee in high school. But I worked. I like everybody else just came through. I had jobs that I didn't always love. I worked for my dad for many years, and from there I got into the automotive industry. I was always into my cars. I got into the automotive industry. I was working as a service manager for a dealership, and I just got to the point where I was like, I'm done with this. This is such a thankless job. It's not great. I was getting married to my first wife at the time, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. And my future brother-in-law, ironically, knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody, and said, I know this guy in the city who's looking for a driver, who's looking to have somebody handle doing their trucking in New York City. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Right off the bat, they were offering more money than I was making as a service manager of a dealership. So I went to work for them, and they were actually a high-end picture framing company, and that's how I got involved with them. With them, I was only doing local work,
Mhm.
where we were just delivering. We had a handful of deliveries locally in the city, not very far from where our office was. I got bored.
Were you, were you
Quite
in your
honestly.
20s then?
I'm sorry.
Were you in your 20s then?
I was in my late 20, 26, 27, somewhere in there. So I was, I was in my late 20s at that point, so 27. So, a lot of it, I got bored. I wanted to do more than I was doing. I'm not very good at sitting around doing nothing. So I was always looking for more to do. I mean, the 5 deliveries we do, honestly, we could do them in an hour. So we still had 7 more hours in a day to kill. So I was always like, I was always asking to take on other projects, things that nobody wanted to touch. I used to be like, yeah, let me do it. I have nothing else to do. So we started doing that, and I started asking bosses, can I do more? Can I do more? Can I do more? Until one point I said, can we get more into handling our own logistics, which was taking on a lot of our own shipping. Because I saw then just how much physical money the company was spending just doing shipments with crates and FedEx and all of that. And I see just the physical money it took to make the crates from a business standpoint. And then, I used to track all this stuff that we were shipping out on FedEx, and just seeing the money that went out, that we were literally spending all this money to ship all this stuff out. And I'm like, God, we can do most of this. A lot of the stuff that we're shipping out is all within the tri-state area, all within, 6, 7, 8 hours from here, maybe Maine or Rhode Island. We can handle a lot of this. I mean, there's a couple things we have to do to set up our truck the right way in order to be able to do it legally. But, so I asked them if we can get involved with that. The first year we did it, they approved it. First year we did it, we wound up saving, I don't know, like $50,000, $60,000. So at that point, I was like, this is a niche. I mean, we have to do this because we have to be able to save this kind of money, especially in the market that we were in, because the market was starting to dry up. We were working very lean at the time. So anything that we could use to save money, and plus we had guys standing around doing nothing. So we, go to Boston, take this 6 pieces up to Boston. Instead of making a crate and, we're paying them anyway, might as well send them up there.
That's amazing that you're taking your initiative to help someone else in their company. Like, you're an employee, but you're taking the initiative to really like make everything better for them?
You know what? Because I mean, granted, I mean, the company that I worked for was amazing. They were great to their employees, and it's one of the things that I've adapted in my own business about how I treat the people that work with me, because they were amazing. And I probably, if I was working for somebody else, I don't know that I would have done that or looked at it that way. But, you know, I always felt like these people were kind of like family to me because they treated me so well. I mean, granted, this is after about a year or a year and a half that I was into the business, and my job title had changed from driver to I was now running the traffic department in a little over a year and a half, that I saw these kind of numbers that were just growing. And I was like, we can do better here. And I brought this to them, and they were like, "Hey, why not try it?" I mean, it was a minimal investment to do. It was a matter of filling out the paperwork and minimal investment to make us so that we can drive up and down the East Coast a little bit. You know, just that we had the legality to do so, because, you know, otherwise you were only allowed to be within a tri-state area. Otherwise, beyond that, you weren't allowed to. But once we started doing it, it just felt like, hey, we can't go back. And I think the company now, with all due respect, I think they've kind of pulled back on that, which is kind of good because I now do work for them. So I do a lot. I've done shipments for them out to LA. I've done shipments out for them to Maine, all over Pittsburgh, all over the country. So it's good for me for what I'm doing now. But, you know, back in the day, I used to love doing that stuff. That was 20 something years ago. You know, and I love to find, you know, ways that we could save the company money. You know, that was always a fun thing for me.
So then you're doing that. What happened over the next, 20 years? Because that was 20 years ago.
Well, I worked for them for 13 years. I loved my job there. I got to be honest. I mean, I honestly think that if in 2008, 2009, when the market hit hard, it pretty much put them in a position where, listen, I mean, I knew the economics of it. You know, when it's similar to the financial crisis we're in now. I mean, probably even more so. But when the market crashed and there was no money, I mean, no money. We went from, on any given day when we were doing our frames, we had 100 frames in production, which were all hand carved, hand gilded, you know, all high end frames. We were doing, I'd say about 100 at any given time, depending upon where they were at. When the market crashed, we went from like 100 down to, I think the day that I was told that it was going to be my last day, we had 6 frames in throughout all the schedules in production. So, I mean, I knew it, I understood it. I didn't like it, but, you know, it's what happened. I mean, the market just dried up, and, you know, I had done well with the company, and I was making good money, and, you know, they needed to, you know, save money where they could. I had a great kid that was working for me, who was my, I guess, I wouldn't even call him an intern. He was my assistant, and he was very sharp as well, a guy by the name of Jerry. And he did very well for himself there. He took my place. He was only with the company for a year, so it was his turn to be the next rising star at the company. And, you know, I had no animosity towards him. I was happy for him. But it was just my turn to move on. And then I bounced from, you know, I went to work for a couple of different framing companies, and felt that I was more comfortable in the logistics aspect of it. Was trying to get back in with another logistics company, but even still, the market was still a little dry. I went to work for another one of the high-end framing companies. I was happy there, very happy there. I was doing very well there. And then one morning I was driving out to Long Island, and I got rear-ended by a drunk driver. And I wound up going out of work for about 2 years because of that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was sent to the hospital. I was in the hospital for a little while. I had all kinds of things that I had to come back from due to that. I mean, again, luckily I had a great person who was working behind me at that framing industry. She wound up coming in and taking over for me while I was out of work. I tried to come back to work for a little while, and I just, physically I couldn't do it. It was just, I was having a lot of residual stuff from a head injury, that I just, it just became too much between the travel, between the work all day long, and then the travel back at the end of the day. It got to be too much. So I just had to kind of, I don't know if retire is the right word, but I had to give up my position because I just couldn't physically do it. I then was home for a while, because of just the nature of I went through surgery on my shoulder that took, 9 months to come back from, because it was all torn up in the bicep muscle from the accident. After I knew that I was going to be out of work for a bit, I decided to have the surgery then. So, I mean, it was just a matter of getting back on pace, trying to find the right thing. Honestly, at that point, I was in my late 40s, and, people looking for young kids, that wanted to come and work. So the market kind of dried up for a guy of my age, because they wanted guys that are going to come in, who are going to be younger, who can work for nothing. I had, my fiance now, who we were living together, and we were living together still. And, we had bills and everything to pay. And, so I was just looking for something more than what people wanted to pay. And I got in with one gallery. I was doing some work with them, and just wasn't the right place. Wasn't a good fit for me. It was doing a lot of stuff that I like doing, which was creating and installation work, but it just still wasn't the right fit. I found that the gallery was void of integrity, and that part just didn't sit well with me. I didn't care for that. And it just got to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to find happiness working for somebody, because a couple of factors here. Number one, a lot of the owners of these galleries and these companies now are younger than me. It's my age is now a factor. I'm, pushing 50. Nobody's going to adhere to my ideas unless they're so brilliant that, they can't help themselves. But a lot of these people were, set in their ways, even though they were younger, even though they were, I guess the right word is ignorant. Maybe, they want to do something, but not know how to properly do it. So it kind of became like ignorance and arrogance at the same time. And you're like butting heads, and, just, again, it just did not feel like the right fit for me. So then, I literally stayed there for a little while. I bided my time a little bit. I had the idea that, now's the time. I'm going to make my move. I'm going to start setting up M&M. I had so much help from my mother, putting it together, because she was one of these people that would just, you throw a challenge at her, you throw anything out at her, and she was just like, she'd be researching it till the end of the day. She'd start it early in the morning and end at night, and then be calling me up and telling me, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this and this and this and this. And meanwhile, I'm like, whoa, you're giving me all this information, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, wait, like, this was when we were getting all the DOT stuff together, we were getting all the permit stuff together. I was like, I just walked in the door from work, give me a minute, let me clear my head, and we can start talking about it. But she was so excited for it, because she knew that it was something that I wanted to do, so she became so excited about it. And that's, that's kind of where the whole M&M came from. It was Mom and Mark. It was
amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, Mom was doing all the work, and it was pretty crazy at the beginning, because I felt like, every time she would tell me to do something, I was like, okay, I felt like I was working for her. Yeah. And I was like, well, can't have a better boss,
So
yeah.
Thank you so much. That was like an amazing story that you have. And I really appreciate you sharing that. Just tell me a little bit about what it's like to start an art entrepreneur business. To start, everything's going crazy.
Yeah.
What does it feel like when you're starting? What challenges are you facing? What's going through your mind?
Wow. Well, let me, I guess I could sum it up in one word: hard. It's, there's a lot. I mean, again, Mom, I can't thank my mom enough for everything she put into it, because she really laid all the groundwork in for everything. Now, when I was putting this all together, I kind of said, okay, I'm going to give myself a 6-month window here. I stayed on the job that I was at, even though I hated it. I mean, I used to wake up in the morning and Susie, my fiance, would be like, why are you even going if you don't like it that much? I was like, I got to, I have to keep going until we get M&M up and running. So I started emailing people, started talking to people in my time, talking to people about potential work. I was sending out letters to people about, introducing myself, like who I am and what my plan is to start this company. So it when you're cold calling and stuff like that, it is just so hard. It's so thankless, because no matter who you write, who you know, doesn't matter. Unless people know who you are, they're not going to give you the time of day. And the best decision I think out of all of them that I made was that I was going to go down to Basel, Art Basel, in 2017. I literally had zero plan other than I'm going down there, and I'm going to try and find work. I'm going to invest the money into going down there, being down there for a week, going and meeting people, talking to people, and doing what I can. Prior to that, I had sent letters to a number of Miami and Florida, South Florida galleries, saying who I was, again, the introduction letter, with my business card. And I told them, I'm going to come down to Florida this week and make a visit to the gallery in person, just to introduce myself and say hi and whatnot. I got the same response from everybody. I went to over the course of 3 or 4 days. This was 2 or 3 weeks before Art Basel. Over 2 or 3 days, I went to, I think, 20 galleries. First 3 days were like, I got the same response from everybody. Hey, yeah, how you doing? Yeah, great. Yeah, I'll use your, yeah, leave me a card. Same response. I don't think I've heard back from any one of those galleries, even now. I've walked into this one gallery and I'll never forget it. And I walked in and I introduced myself and I said, I'm looking for the owner, who was this one person. And they said, yeah, hold on one second. And they went and got him, which is rare because a lot of galleries wouldn't even let you talk to the owner. So this very astute looking older gentleman comes down, and he comes over to me, he introduces himself, and I said, hi, my name is Mark Ortiz. I'm here from M&M Fine Art Services. I just wanted to come in and introduce myself. We're coming down here for Art Basel, and I just wanted to let you know who I am and what I'm all about. And I wanted to give you my card. So I went to hand him my card. He literally reaches into his pocket and hands me my business card and says, you mean this card? And I was like, that's so weird. He goes, yeah, I was going to call you today. And I was like, I am so impressed. He says to me, he goes, I have been doing this for 40-something years, 43 years, I think he said. And I have yet to have I've had people write me letters, I've had people email me. I've never, ever had anybody write me an email, tell me they were coming down, and then showed up when they said they were coming. Never.
Really?
And I was like, I have so much respect for that. And he reached out his hand, he shook my hand, he goes, I'm Ramon Sanuda. I want to give you my card. Here's my phone number. If you ever need anything, you give me a call. And Ramon is now one of my best clients. And I mean, we've been working together almost since that day. But it was one of the most fascinating things. And that was one of the things that happened where I said, hey, I can do this. If I can make that kind of connection, it takes the physical connection as opposed to an email or a phone call or whatever. I mean, you may get a little bit of a response from people via email or via phone call or whatever, but that in your face kind of meeting, and the fact that you put the time in, the effort into going and introducing yourself to these people, it goes a long way. It really does. And, and at that point, I started making sure that no matter what fair I was taking somebody to, while the fair is going on, I stopped by the fair's booth of the people that I transported down there. And I said, hey guys, how's everything going? You guys need anything? Let me know. I'm around if you need anything, whether it's a transport to a client, whether it's, some client needs something done for them, you need installation done
I
for
have
them.
your whole truck down here? Did you
Oh, I
drive
drive a truck, yeah. We bring our own truck.
all your equipment from New York all the way down to Miami?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, we have our own trucks. We're in the process of getting another truck. We transport now. We started off as, ironically, we were going to start off as only a crating business. I was only going to be a crating business, but found that the need for transport is greater than the need for crates. And almost ironically, I've probably can count on two hands the number of crates that I've made since I've been in business, based off of necessity. Some I've had to make because just you can't transport certain pieces because they need the crate. But, how many people call me and say, oh, hey, do you make crates? I probably made about 15 crates off of that. I mean, we haven't even promoted it really. I mean, even though it's on my website, I haven't called people and said, hey, we make crates. And if you ever need anything, let us know. I haven't promoted it. We haven't had to. I mean, I honestly haven't had to reach out to anybody in over a year or even longer and said, hey, we're doing a shuttle. Do you guys need anything? I invested a lot of time and money into setting up shuttle routes, one down to Miami and one to the West Coast. That I remember the first one that we did the West Coast, I think I had about $4,000 or $5,000 worth of work on it. It cost me 12 to run the shuttle. But I said, I want to make sure that my galleries know, all of our galleries, that people that we work with and people that we don't even work with yet, I want them to know that we run a monthly shuttle. And I want them to know that it's always going to be there. So if they ever need to get anything on. Now, I run my shuttle every month. Almost every month I have a full truck going and a full truck coming back. So it's just persistence. It's don't ever let up on the gas.
I feel personally inspired by your story of going to the gallery. I own a service business in Miami where I photograph and all that. And when I first started my business, I emailed 40 museums and galleries here. I looked at every single one.
Yeah,
I got an email back.
You know the drill.
Unreal. I spent 2 weeks agonizing over the perfect email to send.
Oh, I know. It's really funny. Here's a quick story. I remember the day I got my operating permit, which again, I know the date because it's just the day that sticks with me. It was December 1st, 2017. I remember getting my permit and so excited. I got it in the mail and I opened it up and said, your license number, blah, 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 and all that. And I remember looking at my computer. I remember looking at my laptop, the very laptop I'm on right now, and sitting down on my couch, putting my laptop on and opening it up and about to type an email and go, okay, now what? It's like, build a business. It's time to build a business. Get to work. I don't know what I'm doing, but it's time to get to work. So it's just a matter of, one of my favorite movies is The Martian with Matt Damon. And he talks about that. You solve one problem, then you solve the next problem. You solve the next problem, you get to go home. And that's kind of like the philosophy I try to use. Like we have to, you get one client, then you maybe get another client, then you get another client, and then you could build a shuttle. Again, from the shuttle, maybe you could build work coming back. And then maybe from there, you could build work for next month. So everything is always about moving forward. Like, how are we going to use this to move forward for the next shuttle? How am I going to keep, Brittany, Jordan, Taylor, all these guys working? Because they all want, they're all looking for me to keep them busy. They're all freelance. So they can come and go as they please and do what they want. I tell them, hey, listen, I got a job. You want to work? Yeah, great. But now they're like, because they see that there's times where we can go weeks without having a day off, and they're like, if we get a day off now, they're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I mean, unless we're working a normal, 9 to 6 or a 9 to 5 every day, they're kind of like, well, what's going on here? We're slowing down, but,
So walk us through, how did you get your first client?
How did I get my first client?
Now, tell me that story.
I again, it's a lot of what we were talking about earlier. I honestly think that in this particular case, I got my first client because I gave them 13 years of my life. And it's a gallery, the place which I mentioned earlier. I had told them that, what I was doing. It was probably the first company that I reached out to. And, I had a good rapport. The owner and his son was close in age to me. And me and him were very, again, I mentioned they were like family to me when I was working for them. So when I reached out to him, it wasn't even like I'm reaching out to plug myself. It was just, hey man, how's it going? I just wanted to reach out to you, let you know, I've decided that I'm going to make this move. As a matter of fact, I called them up looking more for advice. What should I do? What should I not do? Do you have any ideas for me to get this thing off the ground? And then, it's just by default kind of is like, hey, you want to take this over here? And then, hey, you want to take this over here? That, kind of just leads into that. And then they say, hey, I got this client over here that might want something. I got something here. So it kind of evolved from that. And then, the whole thing with the gallery, which I mentioned down in Miami, they were instrumental as well. And they were one of my first clients, and to this day, one of my best. There was one other gallery that I walked down to in Miami, again, on that same trip that I walked into. I didn't get any work from them for about a year after that meeting, but they did eventually call me. And since then, I'd say for the last year and a half to going on 2 years, I've done all their transports. I brought them to Basel. I brought them to Armory. I brought them to Chicago. Other galleries as well. I mean, I've transported stuff for them back out to LA. So yeah, I've done a lot of work with them. So that was all also on that same trip. So, I view these things almost as nothing is ever negative, because every contact you can make is always going to be positive. Even if it's not positive right there in your face, it may lead to something later on where somebody goes, hey, you stopped by my gallery a week ago or 6 months ago, and you said that you were on shuttles. I've gotten those emails. I've gotten them. With people that you're like, oh, I haven't heard from these guys in a year. And they're responding to an email that I sent when I first started the business. I got an email from a gallery, I don't know, a month and a half ago, before the whole coronavirus thing started. Hey, you sent me this email. Are you guys still running shuttles out to Los Angeles? Yeah, we run them every month. Oh, okay, do you want to take this? So we had scheduled something to go on this particular shuttle, but it's now sitting in my warehouse because we can't run our shuttle.
Yeah, of course. We definitely want to talk about that in a moment here. I guess I want to start, just kind of finish up the topics that we're talking about first.
Right.
What would be some advice that you would give to someone who's just starting their business? And then maybe to build off of that, what was something that you didn't quite expect or that you were surprised by after you started?
Okay, well, the best advice that I would give to anybody who's going to start off a new business is, as I mentioned before, persistence. You can't ever be afraid of the word no. Everybody's going to say no at some point. Know your worth. If you have a value that you're putting things on, and don't be afraid to fluctuate with that either. If I know a guy who started his own business recently, who's working for an art services business and decided to branch off on his own, and we've had this conversation. He's asked me the same thing. What would you do? What I would do is, if I know that I'm not getting any work because there's 50 art services companies in New York, and I know that I can't get any work, even though you think you might get it because of your skill set, then maybe you drop your prices a little bit. Maybe you make them an offer you can't refuse so that you can get in the door and tell them, listen, I'm doing this as an introductory thing. I would like to work with you. I want you to see that I can do this job, and I am capable, and I am everything I say that I am. I'll do it for you at this price on this one, but moving forward, we'll need to adjust as necessary. As far as, I'm sorry, what was the other part of that?
What was something that you were, that you wish that you had known when you started?
I would say the details. I mean, there's just so much detail that goes into every single aspect of it, and it's from you know, the running of the business. I mean, maybe because I'm more of a blue collar guy. I want to get my hands dirty kind of,
Yeah.
you know, mentality. You know, I'm not afraid to get in and mix it up and pick up the tools and install a booth or whatever. As far as the business aspect of it goes, there's a lot of you know, technicality, like you know, stuff that you have to know for the DOT, stuff you have to know for the insurances, stuff you have to know for how many different kinds of insurances you have to carry. You know, there's multiple levels of that. I carry 4 separate insurance policies, so I would say that. I mean, know everything that gets involved in this. You know, making sure. One of the things that I personally don't, because I'm born and bred in New York, and I've been around here for forever. But one of the things that I constantly have to educate my guys on is, you would think this is something simple, but knowing what roads you can go on and what roads you cannot go on with a certain truck. Like, you have to, you would think it would be second nature, but again, a lot of my guys, some guys live in Texas, some guys live in Miami, some guys live in LA. So when they come to New York, it's kind of a little bit of a culture shock for them. So I have to constantly educate them as to, you know, what road you can go on and what road you can't. So, I mean, again, it's all details, but for me, it was probably that. It was, you know, not really understanding just how much went into all the licensing and the insurance and all of that. Just know that there's a lot of paperwork. A lot of paperwork.
Do you so this is, I guess, a personal question, but I come from a blue collar background as well. But of course, you know, the art world that we work in is about as white collar as it can get.
Yeah.
Do you ever experience any friction with that, or any do you ever feel like you're treated differently as a result of that?
You know, I think perhaps because I'm a smaller company, and because I am the owner of M&M, that people see me working in the field, you know, where like a lot of galleries are so used to dealing with, and I don't want to disparage any of the larger name companies, but they see the larger name companies. You never see the owner of those large companies. Okay, you never see the owner of those large companies out there working. They always have an assistant, or, you know, somebody who's a manager or production guy or whatever. Those are the guys that are always doing it. I think in some cases, because I am out there in the field doing it,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps we're not viewed as the same as the larger companies, because if I was such a, I don't know, professional company, I guess the right word is, then I would have all these guys working for me, which goes against what I'm about 100% anyway. Even my own guys, I get friction from my own guys. We got this. You go deal with other stuff. We got this. You go deal with, you know, setting up the next job or whatever. Let me get in there and, you know, install my booths and, you know, bring stuff in off the truck. I'm always doing all of that. So, you know, for somebody to tell me now I can't do it, it kind of, you know, doesn't resonate well with me. So it's just my blue collar background. And I think in a sense that perhaps we may deal with a little bit of prejudice because of that, but I don't know. It's 50-50. I mean, I can't see, I know a couple of people in the industry that are on the scale of the company that I have, the size of my company, and I have so much respect for them when I see them out there working. And just, you know, just knowing that they're out there making sure that their guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to just assuming that they know what they're doing. It for me, it resonates with me, and I'm sure that does for their clients as well. But, you know, I have so much respect for those guys.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that. That was a bit of a personal question.
No, it's fine. You can ask me anything.
Yeah, it's something that you know, I navigate as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the current situation that's happening here.
Okay.
Um, I know that there's a very real human tragedy to what's happening, and I know that
Yeah.
um, I'm assuming that it's probably kind of totally shut down what's happening with you.
Yeah. New York, we had plans to leave on our last shuttle out to LA. We were trying to get it out before we knew what was coming. Um, and I had a bunch of galleries in Los Angeles that had shows that were getting ready to go up. And I have those shows literally sitting in my warehouse right now. And I had to make a very hard call on the 17th, I believe it was. I had to send out an email telling everybody, guys, I'm really, really sorry. This is very painful, but I have to make this decision. We have to shut it down. We're going to revisit this again in 2 weeks, meaning today, which means after we're done with the interview, I'm going to be sending the next level of emails out. But we have to shut this down. I mean, at that point, LA was just starting to get shut down. Somebody else, San Francisco was in a complete shutdown. So I had stuff going to San Francisco and going to LA. They had 14-day quarantines going, I think, if you got into LA. So, I mean, even if I got there, I probably wouldn't have been able to do anything anyway. And now they're saying it's only emergency services and essential people. So if I'm not essential, they're going to shut me down anyway. So I can't, now they're telling everybody don't even leave your house. Well, don't leave your house. Leave your house only if you have to, get food or walk your dog or whatever. I mean, if I'm not walking my dog right now, I'm hardly ever leaving the house. So it's brutal. I mean, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, like 6 guys that I'm talking to on a daily basis, just checking in with them. Hey man, how you doing? I'm looking at all the stuff that the government and the states are offering for people who are 1099 employees, and I'm trying to look out as best I can for the guys that work with me to make sure, hey, listen, I don't have anything for you, and I may not have anything for you for a month, but here, the state is offering this, the government's offering this, you go onto the CARES Act, they're offering, up to $10,000 to cover your rents and your this, and it's considered a grant. So it's a forgivable loan. So, apply. What's the worst they're going to say? No. So, we're doing everything we can. I mean, right now, Susie and I are sitting here. She's working from home. I'm working from home. It's not easy for me. I mean, I'm not a stay-at-home person. I'm not very good at it. I'm not very good at it at all. So, yeah, this is a pain. This hurts. I mean, it's been 2 weeks now, and it hurts a lot. I mean, and my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, her brother's now got it. We had people who live in our apartment building who've been taken out in the ambulance, and I believe we found out yesterday that somebody had passed that lived in our building. So yeah, I mean, it's in a home. It's right here. We have a few confirmed cases in our building. So yeah, so it's everywhere.
Please stay safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you spending your time? Because I'm assuming that you're not someone who's going to sit there and do nothing. You're going to try and work. What are you doing?
Well, no, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, we could discuss later, but I mean, there were a lot of things that I'm looking for the future on M&M anyway, because we hit our spot where it's time for M&M to move to our next, well, what I call my next level, as far as our infrastructure. Which is going to make it better for everybody involved. But I'm working on those things. I'm currently working on rewriting my my website. I'm working with somebody to rewrite a lot of the stuff. We're adding stuff to the website, shows that we've done, photos, like, I sent you a bunch of photos. I mean, I'm sending a bunch of photos to them to put onto the website so we could just update it, because it just felt antiquated to me. It's only been there for 2.5 years, and it felt very antiquated. And so again, I'm not going to sit around and do nothing, but, you know, working on my computer all day, you know, for some people that's a job. For me, no.
No,
I'm used to being in a truck. I'm used to installing, moving art. So it's, you know.
yeah, no, it's rough everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Are you
And I mean,
finding some silver lining in this?
is there a silver lining? Yeah, there is. There's definitely a silver lining. The silver lining is that, well, not that anybody wanted it. It gives everybody rest, because we were going, you know, prior to this shutdown, we had a lot of momentum going. M&M really hit a stride, and we were humming pretty well, even to a fault. I mean, Susie gives me a hard time about it because she says that I never stop. I was, you know, traveling from Miami to LA, from New York back down to Miami. I mean, I did that over the course of 2 weeks. I was in Miami twice, in LA, and back in New York. So yeah, it was just a ton of driving and ton of travel. And I came back, and then I was here for a little bit. Then I went to St. Louis. So there's kind of a lot of movement. And the silver cloud was now that, you know, all those times I said, man, I wish I had a couple of days to take a break. You know, I wish I had a chance to just take a deep breath. Well, here's my deep breath. And once we get back, we're going to be ready to go again. But having said that, you know, there's a lot of downside too. I mean, people are home, they're hurting, they got no money coming in. They, you know, the upswing is that we're going to come back. We're going to be strong. We're going to come back with a lot of work, because I've already spoken to a lot of my galleries, and they are like, listen, doesn't matter how long it's going to be. When we're up and running again, we're definitely using M&M. So there's that silver lining. You know, people like, we love what you guys do. I have galleries that I actually just checked in with a few of my galleries yesterday. How are you guys holding up? How are you? Are you guys okay? Everybody safe? Everybody healthy? You know, it's just, you know, I have these kind of relationships with people, and for me, it's really important to maintain them. And, you know, the little thing goes a really long way. And by doing so, I'm not doing it for that reason. It's just a humanistic thing, but I still feel compelled to reach out to people that I've worked with and just say, hey, how are you feeling? Is everybody okay? You know, so they won't forget those things. And that, I mean, it's really not the reason I do it, but, you know, it's still, you know, just something I feel I have to do.
For sure. Do you have, I know that you work with like a million, you're a very well connected person in the art world, actually. Yeah. Do you have an organization system to keep track of it all?
Yeah, I use my computer, honestly. I have a list of galleries that you know, I've worked with quite a bit. It's really funny because they say, and this is something I heard a long time ago, and it kind of stuck with me over the years. There was a quote that said, in business, you get 80% of your business from 20% of your customers. Yeah. Which is very true. Yeah. Because you get a lot of work from the same people all the time. And I'd say I have 15 to 20 galleries that I do work with all the time. And those 20 galleries keep me going. And then I have, you know, just galleries from all over the country that call us up and say, hey, we need something going to, you know, St. Louis, or we need something to go from LA to Dallas, or vice versa. Or can you pick up in Dallas and drop off in Santa Fe? You know, we do this all the time. I mean, so it's, you know, I keep them in my computer. You know, I've referred to them. Again, I mentioned before, I haven't reached out to anybody in a really long time to say, hey, we have a shuttle going. I haven't had to. I mean, I would love to be able to do that. I just don't have the time anymore to do those kind of things, you know, because we've been so busy. Well, now I have plenty of time, but, yeah, you know, I think it's a little insensitive right now to be calling people up and going, hey, we're going to be running a shuttle when and if, you know, they ever, you know, the CDC ever lets us go back to work. I feel it's a little insensitive, especially with, with the amount of people that are sick out there and with the death toll climbing the way it is. I just feel it's not the time to be thinking about work, even though it is, but it's not.
Yeah.
I just want to lay low from that for a little bit. When we're up and running again, that's the right time to do it. Or at least when we know we're going to have, a head start again, we'll reach out to people. But I think right now is not the right time.
Is there a project that you've done since starting M&M that you're particularly proud of?
Oh, one of my most favorite projects. We did a project a couple of years ago with an artist that's represented by the Martos Gallery here in New York. Jose Martos, Ebony Haynes, Amy Caulfield, Saver, and I'm drawing a blank on the last name. I think the last name is Hahn. They work with this artist at the Martos Gallery by the name of Tyree Guyton. And this Tyree Guyton is the head of he created the Heidelberg Project in Detroit, which is a very urban inner city outdoor museum of all of his artwork. His father was an artist. I believe his wife was even an artist. He's a veteran who served in Germany, who he's just got one of the best dispositions of any person, artist, human being I've ever worked with in my life. And we did a project where we brought a number of his pieces down to Nada Art Fair in Miami in 2018. And we had to put, the gist of the project is that he had a tree and the base of it is cemented into a garbage pail, okay?
Yeah.
And the pieces, that piece by itself is probably 300, 350 pounds. It's like the stem of a tree with two big limbs on it, or three big limbs on it. And it has a cement bottom, and we had to bring it in. And he creates these shoes. I believe the artwork's name was The Souls of the Most High. And he has different colored shoes that he screws to different parts of the thing, and they're intertwined and overlap, and it's one of the most fun projects I've ever been involved in. It's mostly because, number one, is the artwork itself is I don't know what the right word is. It's colorful, it's playful, it's just fun. And we were trying to when we were working with him, we were kind of like, oh, we want to make sure that this goes the right way. He goes, well, if you're putting it on and it's screwed to the tree and it looks good, then you did it right. There was no wrong way to make it. That, in his opinion, he was like, there's no wrong way to make this. It's just we're making art, we're having fun. That was his whole thing. He goes, it doesn't matter how it goes as long as it goes. And it's just one of those projects that just resonated with me for almost any project I've ever done in 25, 26 years. It's one of the most fun projects I've ever been involved with. And, that along with going to the Heidelberg Project in Detroit, where you see all of his art laid out. It's everywhere. It's over like a 3-block square area in where Detroit has been so ransacked with all the devastation of all the businesses that went out over there, and the homes are just burned down and destroyed. And he's taken this area, which is so desolate, and turned it into something fun. He has people from all over the world come and visit this thing, and it's like you'll have a pile of toy lawnmowers, kid lawnmowers, like those little things that they push on the ground. Like he'll find 1,000 of them and make a pile of them and paint stuff and add stuff to it. And that's one piece of artwork. Then he'll find another one with like arms and limbs of mannequins and bodies and torsos of mannequins, and that's another. And then he'll take car doors and paint car doors and do something different. He'll take trailers, little tractor trailer bodies, and just turn them into something else. He has a house that's in that area, which is his house, and it's all painted white with polka dots. and it's multiple color polka dots. It's really it's really a lot of fun, and he's got such a great disposition. He's one of the most fun people to work with. I've worked with him on that project. I worked with him on another project. I believe the name of that project was called For Sam or Love Sam. That was at the Martos Gallery. We brought that work from Detroit to the Martos Gallery here in New York City for an exhibition that was back in, I believe it was October, and ran through January, and it just recently left. But oh, this guy is just, I would jump at any chance to work with this guy. He's just that much fun, and his work it's really cool. Very cool.
It sounds absolutely amazing. You sent me a couple of photos, and they're amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that's a lot of fun, that stuff.
So let's say that if I'm an artist,
right,
and I want to work with you, what are some do's and don'ts that I should do as an artist? And I'm looking to ship my work, and maybe I'm looking to work with you or something like that.
What in regard of?
So, like, what as an artist can I do to make your life easier, or should I avoid doing that would make your life harder?
Oh, you mean for like prep for how I'm going to take your artwork and transport it someplace, or are you talking about if you wanted to come to work for me?
So it would be if I'm an artist and you're prepping my work, but I'm talking more specifically, it could be, with physical preparation of the work before you get there, or it could be not being a jerk in a way that artists don't realize that they're being a jerk. So I want to get, you work.
There are some of them out there.
You're working hands-on with artists every single day.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's a lot of ego wrapped up, so they don't get that perspective. They don't even know when they're doing something wrong. So what's something that, some do's and don'ts of?
Well, I think the most important thing is understanding, and I've had this happen, and this is quite interesting, where we go someplace and we ask an artist, well, how do you want me to handle this thing? Because it just looks so, oblong, or, it's just too fragile to like handle. And the answer is usually something along the lines of, well, you're the art handler. I'm like, well, you should have some kind of an idea of how you're going to get this from here to there before you make it. You should also have, know that this thing has to be handled. I mean, I've worked with some artists that are so amazing at that. Like, I've had artists that they have sculptures that are so heavy or so whatever that they've built handles or things into it for the transport. I've had other artists build stuff and be like, oh yeah, I don't know. I've had an artist build a cement block, okay, a 24 by 24 by 24 cement block, and say, okay, yeah, I need you to move this. Okay, where's the elevator? We don't have an elevator. I was like, okay, well, how would you like me to get this out of here? This thing weighs 450 pounds. How would you like me to get this out of here? Oh, the stairs. So you want me to take a 450 pound cement block down the stairs?
That's not gonna work.
Like the stairs, nonetheless.
You're gonna break the stairs.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I think you guys got the wrong guy.
I remember when I was sorry.
But yeah, I mean, this is just, know what you have. I mean, have an idea of what, I mean, there's a lot that I can figure out. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, but, when I go into a place and they're like, yeah, it's something that I mean, I had another thing recently where this guy had this sculpture, and this sculpture has all kinds of things hanging off of it and around it and all of that. And I'm like, well, does any of this come off? Like, no. I was like, okay, well, can we put any kind of pressure on this thing at all? And any spot, like I'm going around it, like on the legs and because it's a full, like, human being size thing, that was also pretty wide. So, I mean, it was going to take a massive crate to get this thing out. I mean, we're talking something like 96 wide by 84 high, some crazy number. So it was going to be massive. And they kept on saying, yeah, no, you can't put any pressure. You can't touch this thing. Like, well, I got to be able to put some stabilizing spots somewhere, to mobilize it. Even if I just put like something around the head just so that I can keep it against the, the back panel, or maybe even something on the butt. They were like, no, you can't. So, I mean, we worked on this thing for a little while, and it got to the point where in numerous conversations, they were just so worried that this thing was going to get damaged, that I even told them, I said, I just don't know how we're going to move this thing without, putting any pressure somewhere. And eventually they just decided they took the piece out of the show. So I was like, I mean, hurt because it was probably a couple $1,000 job, but I'd rather that than have something get damaged. I mean, it's just some things that there's no thought put into it as to how are we going to move this thing. That, I mean, that's probably my biggest thing to tell an artist. Have a plan. I mean, if it's a conventional canvas, and even if it's wet, we can work around that. But other than that, I mean, if it's something fragile, like really fragile, there has to be some kind of plan as to how we do it. I mean, I've done a lot of things. It's just a matter of figuring it out. But when you have nothing, you have no spot at all to put any pressure, any strap, anything. I mean, we couldn't even screw it up from the bottom because there was nothing to screw up from the bottom, because that was my next plan. And there was just nothing to immobilize it. We were going to put 2x4s in the floor and put foam line 2x4s all the way around the bottom to keep this thing from moving. Couldn't even do that. Wow. So, and just treat it so extremely carefully, but we still couldn't even do that. So there wasn't any consideration put into how do you physically move it,
So I feel like personally attacked by that advice when I was a freshman. I made a piece and I spent like weeks working on this piece. It was amazing, and I built it. And then I was a sculpture major, and then I was like, oh crap, it doesn't fit the door.
Well, yeah, I've had that before too. People are like, hey, yeah, I gotta, this is my artwork right here. It's like, okay, where were you taking this out? It was, well, that's the only door. It's bigger than that door. Like, how do we get it out of here? We've had that happen too. Like, oh, I guess we're not taking that one. Oh. We've had that happen. The best, here's even a better part. I love when people buy art, and collectors are great, bless their hearts, but a lot of times they buy something and then not realizing that it's, oh, that would look beautiful in my living room, except I can't get it in my door, or you go into a building and the freight elevator is the size of a closet, and you go in there and you have a painting that's, 8 feet wide by 8 feet high, and the only way you're getting it up there is on top of the elevator. And I'm drawing the line there. I did that before. I'm not doing that again. I'm not climbing on top of somebody's elevator to bring somebody's artwork in. If the building wants to do it, go right ahead. My liability ends right here. I'm not taking somebody's artwork on top of an elevator. I've had people suggest that.
What are your thoughts on, so I worked very briefly as an art handler for a gallery.
Mm-hmm.
Did not do well at it, so I admire. But the way that gallery set up its shipping for larger pieces, this was my job, was they would actually take the pieces off the canvas, roll them up, and then ship the wooden frame and then the canvas with it.
Well, the reason why people do that is because to a certain degree it's safer. Although I've been told that, I don't necessarily agree with that. Only because, as I was saying in the very beginning, the more you have to handle art, the worse off you are. And by having to unstretch something and then re-stretch it later on, you're kind of going against that whole idea. It's probably a better transport and also much less expensive to transport, because now you have it on a tube, which may be only 5, 6, 7 feet long, that you could probably stand up in the corner of a truck somewhere and then put the broken down stretcher pieces inside the tube. Because we usually stretch them around the outside and then put the 2 pieces, put the broken down canvas pieces inside the tube, and this way it just ships as one entity that way. I've seen both. My preference is to ship it as a whole, because we've transported pieces of art that are enormous. So 7 foot, 8 foot canvas isn't going to bother us.
Yeah, no, it's something that I want to ask your opinion about, because it's something that, like, I always think to myself, who's going to be restretching it?
Yeah, well, that's another issue too.
Are they going to do a good job? Or especially if you're working on that larger scale, like, because I painted for a long time. It's like, does someone really have the forearm strength to restretch a 9 foot canvas?
Yeah. Well, do they have the space? Is the gallery going to do it? Is the gallery going to do it on the floor? Like, I've seen that, and I mentioned the gallery that I worked at that was, devoid of any kind of integrity. Like, I personally haven't stretched a painting. I think I helped somebody do one once. I'd never really been involved in that. I haven't physically done one, but I know how to do it. Let's just say that. I know how to do it. I've been around it for a long time. And I've witnessed people do it the absolute wrong way. I mean, get stretchers that are solid bars that don't have any keys in them. They just make they'll make it out of wood and to the size that they want it, and then literally staple it to the end, and then pull it, and like not using any pullers or anything like that. Just and then you get it, and it's like flopping in the breeze like that because it's not tight. And it's I've seen some awful jobs, and the improper treatment of art. But again, when I talk about it, lack of integrity, this gallery didn't care. They just were about getting it on the wall, sell it, and let it go. They didn't have any thought as to what happened to the art or what the care of the art is, and that was a problem for me as well. That was one of the integrity issues that I had. So yeah, I mean, it's important to know who's working on it too. I mean, you want to have somebody who's got some experience, not some guy, hey, can you stretch this painting? Oh, I've never done it, but yeah, I'll try. That's why I won't do it, because, I don't want to claim to say, hey, I know how to do something, then if I screw it up, well, I didn't know what I was doing in the first place. So,
I worked there I only worked there for like a week.
Oh.
But I've stretched 1,000 canvases.
Yeah.
Stretched a
As
lot.
an artist, you probably had. I mean, I know a lot of artists who stretch their own.
Yeah, no, I stretched my own. I stretched, in art school, kids paid me to stretch theirs because I loved it.
Okay, yeah. Well, then you're a pro at it.
I'm pretty good at it. I didn't last there, not because I wasn't good at stretching canvases. I didn't last there because it was bad at gallery.
Well, you can get a job just doing that alone.
But and I'm a pretty beefy guy. I'm not not super beefy, but I could not stretch these. We had 7, 8 foot canvases. I couldn't do it. My forearms weren't strong enough, and I'm here, because once you have an oil painting and it's dried,
yeah,
you can't stretch that. But it's never gonna be right. All right, I'm so glad that I worked there, and they were a very successful gallery, and they were moving a lot, and I was
one of the things that we used to do in the art world, in the framing industry, is when we knew we had a restretch, they used to put a chemical agent on it to relax the canvas so that you could pull it and stretch it. It would loosen up the canvas, because that thing, forget it, it comes hard as a rock when the oil is dry or the acrylic is dry. Forget it. You can't even budge that. And if you do, then you're going to crack the paint. Then you're talking about a restoration project.
Oh no. So if I'm like an artist or a curator or like a collector, and I have artwork that I want to last for 20 years,
mm-hmm.
What would or longer, do you just have any advice to just make sure that my art doesn't get ruined?
Well, depends on what you got too. I mean, if we're talking a paper piece, are we talking canvas pieces? Are we talking well, I mean, between the two, I mean, if you have a paper piece, obviously you're going to frame it under. I would highly recommend some kind of UV rated, like probably like a museum style glass. Just especially like, where you're from, like Miami, you're surrounded by water all over the place there. So I mean, there is a lot of sulfur in the air. So you want to have some kind of glazing that's going to be UV rated. Like I would recommend museum glass. I mean, there are some lesser versions of it, but I would do that. This way it will protect it against fading and foxing and, that kind of stuff over the years. Canvas, the one thing I would recommend on a canvas piece, I probably wouldn't put it against anything that has any direct sunlight. I mean, you can frame it and put it underneath something. I mean, I've seen that done, but it's not a typical application. Because people generally just, when they buy canvases, they either want to float it or in a conventional frame, but they want to see the canvas itself. So they don't usually put canvas work under glazing or anything. So I would just try to keep that away from, direct sunlight, because it will fade over time, especially with as strong as the sun is down in Miami.
Yeah. All right, just a couple more questions just to wrap things up.
Okay.
So let's say that I'm an artist where I have a full-time job and I'm looking to go and make that leap to selling my work.
Okay.
You've worked directly with artists for, decades now. Do you have any advice for that artist that is like, they have their MFA, they're talented, they have the connections, they're making work on the weekends, and they want to make that leap?
Well, I think almost every artist that's going to be in that position is probably going to already have a online social media presence of some sort, Instagram, Facebook. I would try, if you can't get into galleries, I mean, because I know galleries are very strict on who they bring in. They have a select group of artists that they work with or want to promote. I think the next level of avenue would be to look at some of the emerging artists art fairs. Superfine being one of them. That I've worked with them. They're a great group. They have their art fairs. I think they now have 4 locations where they run their fair. One is in New York, LA, Miami, and Washington, D.C., I believe. Superfine is a good one. Affordable Art Fair is another. I think Independent's gotten too, I don't think Independent would be good for an emerging artist. But these kind of, you got to keep your eye out for those kind of fairs. Because, I mean, even still, there's a little bit of a price that gets involved with just having a small wall to show off some of their work. But that would probably be the next avenue if they can't get into a gallery. Thinking about what would be out there for them. Probably, yeah, I would say those smaller art fairs. That's probably the best bet because of the lack of cooperation you get from a lot of these gallery owners. And some of these gallery owners are also looking for them. So
yeah,
there are galleries that are looking for those emerging artists because they want to see if they can promote them, make them big, and be able to make money off of them while the artists are able to make a little bit of money themselves. There are a few of those galleries in New York, but those are a lot harder to get into. I mean, I could probably even send you some stuff via email. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but one of the artists that works for me is in one of those kind of programs, and she does some art fairs as well through this program where they have gallery spaces where they show very, very beginning artists artwork, people who are just coming up through the ranks and trying to get this stuff out there.
Yeah, that's super smart. Thank you. What would be something that, a gallery, is there a trend of things that they're looking for?
Yeah, if they are, I don't know them. I mean, I've seen it with a couple of galleries that they tend to bandwagon jump a little bit. You know, like I've seen one artist, and I don't want to give away his name because I'm going to give away the galleries.
Yeah.
But I've seen one artist who is a recent graduate of college who came out of the big school, who is extremely. I mean, I've done work with him. He's so talented. He's done work with a gallery here in New York, a gallery in LA, and like now everybody just wants to get a piece of him. And this poor guy, I feel so bad for him because he's like so young and he's working so hard right now because he's trying to make everybody happy. And I guess it's the opposite of what the starving artist is. Now he's in such high demand that everybody wants a piece of him. Where he goes from being rep by 1 or 2 galleries to now, there's like 20 or 25 that are trying to get a hold of him. So I do see that trend where people try to get, the same artist over and over and over again, especially if they're younger, and this guy is. So that would be about it that I know of. I mean, I've been on the services side of it more than the artwork side of it. So I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. So
Yeah, I think
it's just what I see,
this is, the secret puzzle. This is Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Like no one's going to. If people knew the answer to this, then they'd be, already.
But I'll tell you what. I mean, there have been times like in my career. I think I've done it 2 or 3 times now, where like I've made an introduction between an artist and a gallery. And they've, worked together. So, I mean, there's that. I mean, just tell everyone to call me. I'll try and find a gallery for them.
Get your art handler well.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we have a trade-off.
Right, offer them lunch when they.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Bring everyone some waters and some Coke and some lunch.
We'll work for food.
All right. What are some common mistakes that you see artists making, especially the younger ones? Just to kind of wrap that little segment up.
They're, how do I say this the right way? Knowing what materials they're working with and knowing how to protect them. Like I've seen artists who work with concrete and make a thick concrete piece and don't use any kind of chicken wire or rebar or anything inside,
Really?
just poured concrete and made a mold or something. And then the second you go to move it, poof. Like, well, how can you blame anybody for this thing falling apart? And thank God that happened when she was moving it, not me, because and she even said, well, why did that happen? It's like, you got no kind of rebar or anything in there to hold it together. You have to have spacing in these things. That's one. I've seen artists that work with canvases that haven't properly sized their canvases before they painted on them, and then get a lot of cracking in their on their canvases. But most of these artists that are around are going to use the proper methods because of just their training, like you talking before about people with MFAs and all of that, and but you do get the common one, not necessarily an art student, so to speak, just thought it'd be fun to try, and you get those guys. You get those people out there who don't know exactly what they're working with and just, don't lend the proper support to something, don't lend the proper, put a piece of artwork and put stuff on canvas that is now going to weigh 250 pounds and you have it on a little wooden stretcher, like, come on, you got to be able to support this thing,
Yeah.
working with these different kind of mediums and putting stuff on canvas that is so heavy. And then they have a little 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch wooden stretcher. And then when you go to move it, the thing just starts cracking because it just can't support the weight. I've had that. We've
You're
had.
triggering me.
Hmm?
You're triggering me. So when I was in college, I worked as a teaching assistant for sculpture for several years. And I worked with a couple hundred students, and constantly, like, I felt like I was just teaching them geometry the whole time. I felt like,
Right.
you know, like constantly making things wrong or poorly. Or like, I know when I was working I worked for some time as a talent scout for several galleries.
Right.
Where I was in Baltimore, and they were in Philly for the two galleries, and I would find the artists in Baltimore to send to Philly for the shows. And all the time I go to opening, I'd find amazing work. And then I'd look at the paintings, and I'm a painter, you know, and I'd see, oh, they didn't paint right. They put a thick piece of paint over a thin piece on oils, and it's not going to dry right, and it's going to crack. And in 4 years,
Yeah.
the gallery's going to sell it. In 4 years, they're going to come and say, you show us a crap painting.
I know this artist that works with mosaics.
Okay.
And he, I don't even know where to even start. Just some of the stuff I've seen him do, I'm like, really? So, no, it's you know, you look at it and you're like, well, it's nice, but I'm not sure how long it's going to last. But, you know, just like what you were talking about, you know, you see some things just in technique that are just like, yeah, come on. You gotta, I've seen people put pieces of copper on a canvas, you know, just to make some kind of odd, you know, painting / multimedia thing, and they have all this weight, and then it starts pulling away from the stretcher, and then you got this like thing that's really bowed, and they're like, well, how do I fix that? I was like, well, first of all, you shouldn't be putting this on a canvas. This should probably be on, you know, plywood or something like that, and then put it onto a stretcher, and, you know, something that can support the weight of it, you know? You got to know, design it the right way. You know, start at the bottom and work your way out, you know?
That's something that's going to, you know, seriously affect, I'm talking to my audience here, that's something that's going to seriously affect the price that your work sells for and that it's valued at. Because, you know, people are going to buy, like, people are buying your work as an investment a lot of times.
Right. How long is it going to last?
Yeah. And if your work can't even last 10 years for them to resell it, you're a crap investment. You are.
Yeah. No, I know. I've seen it. I mean, I've seen a lot of that. But it's just like, you know, it's the old saying about common sense isn't so common. You know, a lot of these times you got to, you know, think about what you're building, you know. I had an artist that I worked with recently who built these things, and he was putting some kind of plaster mold over, and he was using original, you know, existing shapes, like, you know, just household things, you know, like a vanity or something like that, and putting plaster on top of it, and then designing his work around it. When you put that kind of weight onto something, you got to make sure that it can support it, you know. But how long is this going to last? And especially if you have to move this thing around a lot, you know, how do you wrap this thing when you can't put your hands on the plaster, can't put any kind of pressure on the plaster? I mean, these are all factors. Going back to our original conversation, how do you handle a piece of artwork if it, you know, can't be handled? You know, and the less you handle something, the better. You know, I mean, some of those photos that I sent you there was one of a chest of drawers that an artist painted, and they told us we couldn't put anything on it. I was like, but what if I made a vertical crate, and just foam lined it? Would that be okay? And it's like, well, will it be able to move? No, because it's going to be built to the exact dimension of the artwork, but it's only going to have very residual contact only from the foam that's around it, and it's going to have less than a ½ inch of play on either side. Can we do that? They said, yes, you can do that. In those photos, that photo is there of a chest of drawers that we built. We built this crate for exactly. It had foam all the way around it, and that was the only way that we can send that thing out, because they didn't want me to put any kind of real pressure on the face of this thing because it was recently painted. And it was painted on the top and on the bottom, on the face. On the sides, I don't think there was anything.
Do you deal a lot with like site-specific work? I don't know if you know.
I'm sorry?
I don't know if you know the phrase or not, but it's a big buzzword in our world. Site-specific.
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just to wrap it up, do you have anything that you want our audience to know about? Anything that you feel that any questions you want to ask them, or anything that you want to say as a final?
Well, I mean, I think knowing, I mean, without it being too much of a shameless plug, you know, M&M is, you know, some of the things that I was talking about earlier. We're really planning on moving forward. We had a lot of momentum going before this whole crisis hit. M&M is on the verge of trying to purchase another truck. You know, we have to wait for this market to come back to us a little bit. We're also in the process of looking for a new warehouse space. Our current warehouse space is located about 60 miles out east on Long Island, which makes it about, on any given day when there's no traffic, about an hour and a half to get to our warehouse. We're going to be more conveniently located to New York. We're going to just be on the other side of New Jersey, looking in Newark and in Caldwell, right in that area, for a new warehouse, which is going to be a more secure area, more secure building with state-of-the-art security system, climate control. We're doing all of this, and we have a number of galleries that are going to be storing their artwork with us. So moving forward, we're going to be looking for more people. So we're going to need more inventory management. We're going to need more crating going. So, you know, if people want to stop by or send me information on them, I'll be happy to hear from them, especially emerging artists. You know, I'm always happy to work with them.
What's the best way to contact you?
Well, the website you can go to, or you can use my email address, which is Mark, M-A-R-K, at mmfineartservices.com. That's always the best, or the phone number, which is 917-710-1626. That's the best way to contact me. That's my direct cell phone number. So I use that as my business line. That's my whole concept with my business. I want my people to be able to, my clients, my customers, anybody who needs to get in touch with me, to be able to call me and talk to me directly. And I use that with all my clients. Every one of my clients has that cell number. So
that's huge. That's powerful. That's like, I don't feel comfortable doing that with my business all the time, unless I know them and I'm already working with them. That's like amazing of you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, yeah. And I mean, when I started M&M, this is the last idea I'll give you on that, and then we can end this. The whole thought that I had going into M&M is that I wanted to create a business that was approachable, was not the big companies, because the big companies are great. They have their niche, they have their space, but I didn't want to be them. I wanted to be an art services company that, you know, was approachable, that wanted to work with clients, that, you know, has no problem with, you know, being able, you can call me any time of the day, any, you know, you have any questions or concerns, you can always call me. My clients know that about me. I've had conversations with people at 11, 12 o'clock at night. So I have no problem with talking to people and, you know, figuring out the best solution for whatever we need to do.
That's amazing.
I love working with people. My clients are great. They're amazing. I love every one of them. I mean, I just want to give one quick plug out, because I was told that if I ever talk to anybody doing any interviews, I got to give a shout out to my good-looking staff out at the Jessica Silverman Gallery in San Francisco, because they're one of the funnest. Both Ben and Jessica and Jen are just so much fun to work with. They're great. They give me work all the time. They are constantly giving me crap all the time. They have no problem with calling me up late at night either, because they're on the West Coast, I'm over here. So whenever they call me with requests all the time, which, you know, some we're able to help them out with, some we can't. But yeah, they're just a lot of fun. I mean, I have a lot of great galleries that I work with, and I'm so happy to have them. And I just hope we're doing the right thing by them, all of them, not just them, but all of them.
So when you're done watching this video, you check out on Instagram, M&M Fine Services, and then Jessica Silverman Gallery after that.
Yeah, do that. Yeah, they're a lot of fun. Trust me, you won't be sad from checking them out.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a good day, man.
You too.
Take care.